The evening shift had always been a quiet and predictable affair for Jada, a 28-year-old waitress who worked at Poppy's Cafe, a small and cozy spot tucked away in a quiet corner of town. Most of the patrons who frequented the cafe were retired locals, regulars who came in each day to enjoy their coffee, catch up with old friends, and reminisce about the good old days. The pace was always slow, the chatter soft, and the atmosphere serene, offering Jada a peaceful escape from the outside world. She liked the tranquility, the familiarity of it all. It was an environment where surprises were few, and every evening unfolded much like the one before. But tonight, that calm rhythm would be shattered. Just before closing time, as the last few cups of coffee were being served and the clock ticked closer to the final hour, the door's bell chimed softly, signaling the arrival of a customer. Jada turned, expecting it to be one of the usual late-night stragglers, but her eyes widened as she saw who had walked through the door. It was none other than Elon Musk, one of the most famous, talked-about figures in the world, casually strolling into Poppy's Cafe as though it were just any other diner. He didn't seem to be in a hurry or rushing for attention. Instead, he carried an air of casualness that was hard to ignore. Jada froze for a moment, her heart racing. She had seen Elon countless times on TV, in interviews, and plastered across social media, but seeing him in person was something else entirely. Despite the fame that clung to him like a second skin, he seemed a bit tired, perhaps weary from a long day. Yet, he still exuded an undeniable confidence, as though his presence was naturally magnetic. He didn't walk with the arrogance that many would expect from such a high-profile individual, but with a quiet demeanor that made him seem almost ordinary, in stark contrast to the image she had of him. He took a seat at a small booth near the window, staring outside, deep in thought. The light from the street lamps cast a soft glow on his face, adding a moment of stillness to the busy cafe. Jada, still in a daze, gathered herself and took a deep breath. She had to be professional. After all, he was just another customer. As much as her mind raced with excitement and awe, she reminded herself that she had a job to do. She plastered a warm smile on her face, one that she had perfected over the years, and approached his table. "Hi there, what can I get for you tonight?" she asked, doing her best to sound casual, though she could feel the tension in her chest. "Just a coffee, black, and maybe a slice of whatever pie you have," he replied, his voice calm, even soothing, as though this were just any ordinary day for him. "Right up," Jada responded, nodding quickly, trying not to betray her excitement. She turned to make his order, her hands slightly trembling as she poured the coffee and sliced a fresh apple pie. She couldn't help but notice the curious glances from the regulars, some whispering among themselves, likely wondering what a high-profile figure like Elon Musk was doing in their small-town cafe. There was a subtle shift in the air, an undercurrent of excitement mixed with suspicion. But Jada, doing her best to stay focused, reminded herself that her job was to serve, and she would treat Elon the same as any other customer. She returned to his table, placing the coffee and pie in front of him with a smile. "Here you go," she said, her voice steady. "Thank you," he replied, taking a sip of his coffee and glancing outside again, lost in thought. For a brief moment, Jada wondered what was on his mind. Was he thinking about his latest project? The many ventures he was involved in? Or maybe he was simply enjoying the quiet, just like the regulars who frequented this cafe. Jada couldn't help but feel a bit of sympathy for him, despite the world of success and ambition he inhabited. Everyone, she thought, needed a place to unwind. As she moved back behind the counter, Jada couldn't help but glance at him from time to time. She wondered what it would be like to live a life like his, constantly in the public eye, always striving for bigger and better things. But not everyone in the cafe seemed to share her admiration. Eventually, Frank, one of the older regulars, stood up and walked over to Elon's table. Frank, known for his blunt, unfiltered opinions, made his way toward the booth, and Jada's stomach churned in anticipation. She couldn't shake the feeling that something uncomfortable was about to unfold. "Excuse me," Frank said, his voice gruff and loud enough to draw the attention of everyone in the room. "Aren't you the guy who used to support OpenAI? Helped set it up, didn't you?" Elon looked up, pausing mid-sip, before responding calmly. "Yes, I was involved in the early days. Frank crossed his arms, a skeptical look crossing his face. So why'd you ditch them? And from what I hear, you're starting your own AI company now. Seems a little contradictory, don't you think? Elon took a deep breath, setting his coffee cup down. I have concerns about the direction OpenAI is heading, he explained. I believe AI should be aligned with truth, not biased by hidden motives. That's why I started XAI. I wanted to build something more transparent, more focused on facts. Frank scoffed, not buying it. You're just looking out for yourself, he said. Didn't get the control you wanted. So now you're making your own AI. More money, more power. Isn't that it? A murmur of agreement rippled through the cafe. Jada felt a pit form in her stomach. The hostility in the air was palpable. While Elon remained calm, Jada noticed a subtle shift in his posture, a slight tension in his body that revealed a side of him she hadn't seen before. He was still a public figure, a man used to criticism and challenges, but the way the conversation was unfolding in this small, intimate space made it seem more personal. It's not about power or profit, Elon responded, his tone more measured now. It's about accountability. AI is one of the most powerful tools we have. I don't want to look back and see that I didn't do everything I could to keep it in check. Jada, still behind the counter, watched the exchange unfold. She had been thrilled to serve Elon Musk, to have someone of his caliber in their little cafe. But now, as the conversation grew more heated, the regulars seemed almost hostile. The whispers had turned into open criticism, and Jada felt the weight of their disapproval. It made her heart sink, and she couldn't help but feel a little out of place. She had always seen Elon as a symbol of progress, a man who didn't just talk about change, but actively worked to make it happen. Yes, he was controversial, but weren't most visionaries? Unable to hold her thoughts in any longer, Jada walked over to Frank's table, her heart pounding in her chest. Clearing her throat, she spoke up, her voice steady but with an underlying edge. Look, I know not everyone agrees with what he's doing, but you can't just dismiss him as selfish, she said, glancing around at the other regulars. This is a guy who's not only invested in space and tech, but he also has a foundation that supports hospitals and sick kids. I've read about it. And when it comes to AI, well, technology moves forward whether we like it or not. The fact that he's trying to make something safer, more transparent, that's worth something, don't you think? For a moment, the room fell silent. Frank looked taken aback, and the other regulars exchanged glances. Jada felt the weight of their gazes, the skeptical expressions, but she held her ground. She wasn't backing down. Her words seemed to catch Elon's attention. He looked up at her, a glimmer of surprise, and perhaps even appreciation, flashing in his eyes. Jada realized then that he hadn't expected anyone to defend him, especially not in a place like this. She wasn't just a waitress in his eyes. She had become something more. She had stood up for him when the world seemed to be questioning his motives. Her words had sparked something in him, and she felt a shift in the energy of the cafe. But it wasn't just about the conversation. Jada had taken a stand, and in doing so, had changed the course of the night. Despite the murmurs and discontent around her, she knew that she had done what felt right in her heart. Even if the room didn't agree, she had remained true to herself.